It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this evening's London Ballet Circle in Conversation, and an extra warm hello to any of you who are joining us for the very first time. During her tenure as artistic director at English National Ballet, Tamara Rojo made her mark on the company. Well, Tamara's gone now, and there's a new guy in town. And if the knockout program he presented at Sadler's Wells in September is anything to go by, the company's in very good hands, and we're going to be in for some tremendous ballet performances. We're absolutely delighted that Aaron Watkin has come to join ENB, and we're even more delighted that he's here with us tonight. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Nice to be here. My pleasure.
And it's always a pleasure to welcome back the renowned critic and great friend to the London Ballet Circle, Graham Watts, to lead this evening's conversation. Thanks, Graham.
My pleasure.
If you have a question you'd like to pose to Aaron, please type it in the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd give your first name as well, that would be super. And Graham will field the questions to Aaron. So now that's enough from me. Please enjoy this evening's In Conversation with Aaron Watkin and Graham Watts.
Thank you so much, Susan. First of all, a kind of preemptive apology from me. I'm struggling a little bit with a cold. When I spoke to Aaron last week, he was struggling a little bit. I don't think you can catch a cold over Zoom, but anyway, I seem to have inherited it from somewhere. So I've got a big cup of tea and a glass of water. So if my voice starts to go and I go on mute, you'll know it's because I'm having a good cough. I hope we get through it okay. Now, I've already kind of preempted this by saying Aaron, but I just want to start with the most important question, because I know an Aaron and I know an Aaron. And I spoke to a very close friend of Aaron's not very long ago who said, well, I used to call him Aaron, but I've changed recently and I call him Aaron. And he's never complained about either. So I just want to double check to avoid embarrassment that I'm right with Aaron. Is that okay?
Yes, you're very right.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. You're very sweet, though, not to complain when people pronounce it wrong. Now, Susan's already mentioned about putting questions in the chat, so I don't need to go through that again, but please do. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that those listening will want to pick up, and we'll come to them at the end. I mean, what I'm planning to do and what I discussed with Aaron when we spoke last week is to kind of go on a journey, really, starting in the here and now, and then going back to the beginning and through Aaron's incredibly varied career as a dancer, choreographer, something some of us, I think, forget, and director. So I want to start off with your appointment at the ENB, which of course was quite a long running thing, because the announcement of your appointment and you actually taking up the job, there was a sizable gap between. And I think it's fair to say, without any, or certainly without any offense being caused, that your appointment really, when it was announced, is that you were kind of a proverbial dark horse. I mean, rumors were rife around the British dance community about who might get appointed. And, so many names were suggested, all the usual suspects. But when the announcement was made, it was a surprise. And yet when one reviews your career to that point, you're such an obvious prime candidate for so many reasons, not least the fact that you'd run a large company for 17 years. So I just wanted to really, get your thoughts about, first of all, what attracted you to ENB, and why was it a time for a change for you? And I think thirdly, without giving any state secrets away, the sort of process you had to go through to get the job.
Right. So firstly, you said on those three questions, what attracted me to ENB? Just a little bit of background is that I was a dancer. That was basically where I started my career in the National Ballet of Canada for a season and a half, but then I very quickly came over to English National Ballet. And that's where I started 30 years ago. So I already have a connection, because it was very intense atmosphere. We were touring a lot. And so you were around your colleagues all the time. And even though I was only in the company for two seasons, the friendships that I forged are lifelong. And ENB always made an impression on me that it was much more than just a job. It was really a family kind of pioneering atmosphere, and I loved it. So 30 years later, when the job came available, I was very attracted to it because I also love London. I love the company. I knew the history of the company, and I'd been in Dresden for 17 years and was, to be honest, looking for a change. And just, I believe that things in life happen at certain times for certain reasons, but you have to be kind of aware and put yourself out there. So it all just seemed to fall into place. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity at this point in my life.
Fantastic. I mean, I was going to mention later on the fact that you were with ENB for 2 seasons. Obviously, that it doesn't seem possible actually, because you look perennially young. But the fact that it was 30 years ago, you must have been a child star when you were there. It's a very different company now. I'm guessing you kept tabs with it. What was going on there over the time that you've been away from it?
Obviously in different periods, but you know, Wayne was my director in the Dutch National. I knew him quite well. When I was in ENB, I actually knew Derek quite well, although he wasn't affiliated at that point with the company. And obviously when Tamara took the helm, it was the company, there was so much publicity and so much going on here that I also kept my eyes following what she was doing, and also seeing how she was really diversifying the company and the repertoire and stuff, which I was quite attracted to. So yeah, I think I kept tabs on it. I was very busy in Dresden trying to, you know, really build up a relatively classical company that wasn't so well known. And I think that's where all my energies were going, was just creating or embracing tradition and forging innovation. So the classics, but also bringing in choreographers. I think in my tenure there, I did 90 premieres. We toured to 35 countries. We were doing a lot. And we were, I think, inside the ballet world or the dance world, quite known, although obviously not on the level of a company like English National or Ballet, that kind of, but yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
So I haven't done my homework to check this point, but I'm guessing when you were at ENB, Beryl was the director?
No, when I was there, it was Yvonne Nage.
Ah, okay. So it was after Beryl.
What happened was I was actually in the National Ballet of Canada, and Lynn Wallace was the co-artistic director there. And she went over to English National as Yvonne's sort of associate director, I believe. And so it all sort of happened that way. Lynn followed me through school as a young dancer. She took me into the company, and she really was someone who was quite instrumental in my career and making things happen for me. She was very, yeah, I hold her in high esteem.
You know, somebody's a nice person when they have lots of mentors who help things happen for them. So let's go back to the beginning, as I said at the outset. So how did ballet begin for you? Did you come from a dance family, or was there no connections with dance in British Columbia when you were growing up?
So my family, mostly carpenters, electricians, insurance agents. No one has anything to do with dance. My sister started out in a local dance school. She was taking tap, and I really liked tap dancing right from the beginning. I loved the sounds, the rhythms, the music. And so I joined in and got my start in tap. And very soon after that, my teacher said, well, you really should do a bit of ballet to help your upper body. And I wasn't that interested. And I just kind of went along to an audition for the National Ballet School of Canada with no training. And they sort of stretched me, and remember looked at my feet, and they were like, oh, I didn't even know what a good foot was supposed to be. But apparently they saw some talent, and they invited me to the summer school in Toronto, which was 5 hours on the plane from my home. And I was 12. And I ended up just yeah, getting into the school, very homesick and not very into it for the first 2 years, but then got very, very involved. And yeah, I saw what ballet actually is and started to understand it differently. We also had flamenco in school, which I loved. So I got my outlet of rhythms and music there as well, which was wonderful. And then yeah, got more and more interested in ballet.
That sounds very interesting. You had flamenco in the school. That's pretty unusual, I would have thought, for a ballet school. So it's probably reasonable to say that it was a slow burn, really. It was ballet was not sort of, your burning passion and then you went to ballet school. It was, you went to ballet school, you were lucky that you have the right physique, the right feet, etc. And then it took a couple of years for you to really get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I negotiated with my principal, Betty Oliphant, to send me to local tap dancing classes in the evening. And she wasn't very accommodating in the beginning. But yeah, I think the flamenco really helped me because I always had an affinity to music and rhythm. And I just loved that. I felt very natural in that type of dancing, whereas ballet was something that I, trying to perfect, let's say. It was working at something that I felt always I needed to be better. And yeah, I didn't enjoy it the same way in the beginning.
I mean, it's a wonderful innovation because, of course, it helps musicality, rhythm, timing, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, it sounds great. So from school, you went into the company in Canada, and one of the things that I found really fascinating about you is that you had such an international career as a dancer, because Canada, England, we've already mentioned, Netherlands, Spain, Germany. I mean, not many people have that breadth of dancing in all those different companies. Was that a deliberate policy on your part, or was it a case, as you mentioned, going from Canada to ENB, was you were kind of helped along that passage?
Yeah.
Did that happen to you through your career?
I mean, I would say this. In school, I was always very attracted. In the National Ballet of Canada at that time, Eric Bruin was the director and very inspirational to me. He also taught us at school, and the repertoire that he brought was a very kind of European type of repertoire. So we were really, actually very English. Also, we did Ashton, and we did Macmillan, but we also did Yuri Killian and William Forsythe. He brought when he was just a young new choreographer. Actually, Reed Anderson did that. He was my director after. But I think I was just exposed at a very young age to these European choreographers, and I was always attracted to Europe. So Lynn, the first step for me to go from Canada was to ENB, which happened through her helping me. And then I went to the Dutch National for 7 years, and Wayne Eagling was my director there. And then I had been asked, because William Forsythe had set a ballet on us in Canada. He created one when I was young. And he had said right then, why don't you come to my company? And I was completely didn't understand who he was and thought, no, I want to do classical ballet. So I stayed for years in more classical companies because I felt like I needed to do that. And if I would leave that for a while, it'd be too hard to come back. But then at a certain point in 1997, he invited me for the third time. And I thought, well, he's probably not going to keep inviting me. I was actually injured in a cast, and he just said, well, you'll get better and come to my company. So I did, and I had a wonderful experience working with him that obviously was forged a lifelong sort of friendship and mentorship from someone who I incredibly respect. And then I went to Spain to Nacho's company for a short period of time. And then I decided to stop dancing quite young, at like 29, because Bill had sort of asked me to start setting some of his pieces, which I loved. And in school, I always liked the part of rehearsing, of watching, teaching, of just mentoring, of making schedules, of programming. I love that whole aspect. And to be honest, I feel like my real calling in life was always what I'm doing now. Dance was something I enjoyed, but it didn't feel like that was my purpose. My purpose is what I'm doing now, I think.
I want to come back to Eric in a minute, but was that feeling there early on, or was it something you kind of grew into in your late 20s? This kind of feeling that you were there to give more to the profession rather than just being a dancer, if I can say just being a dancer.
Yeah, I think that happened quite early on. I think, to be honest, and I don't say this in a negative way, but like, you know, in a lot of professions, you're just focusing on what you're doing, that one thing, and you're just trying to perfect it day in, day out. Whereas I loved everything that I like, the multidisciplinary aspect of what I'm doing. So I like the part of administration. I like organizing. I like scheduling. I like getting things together and figuring them out. I like rehearsing. So I love being in the studio as well. I like meeting people. I love also with ENB that I didn't have in Dresden because it was an opera house, working with a board of trustees. I love meeting sponsors and engaging with people in dance. So I think, yeah, I think it did. I had it very young because I think when I was 15, a good friend of mine who's the director in Dresden School, his name's Jason Beachy, he and I got permission to stage Paquita on our free time. So on Sundays, we just organized all the kids from the residence. We did all the rehearsals. We taught them everything, and then we presented it to our principal. So I think already we were really into that very young.
Yeah. Can I just come back to Eric? This is a slightly selfish thing from my part. I hope the audience will indulge me. But if I could meet anyone from a previous generation that it's now no longer possible to meet, I think Eric Perun would be pretty much top of my list. So tell us about him. What was he like as a director? What did you learn from him?
Well, I just felt like he had a certain confidence. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, but he had a very human way about leading a company and inspiring people. There was a movie, a documentary that was made from the National Ballet of Canada called Bold Steps many, many years ago. And it was right when Eric was taking over. It was such an exciting time because he had young new talent, established soloists, and Karen Kane and Veronica were always, Frank Augustine, they were all still there. It's such a, he taught class every day. He was a brilliant teacher. I remember him like singling me out when I was really young, doing a jeté in the company and asking me to show it. And I was like, I don't know, he just made such an impression on me. He's someone that I respected hugely as a human and also as an artist and as a mentor. And I think that gave me an impression of like how he spoke to people and how he was outside of just his artistic vision was really important.
You've also developed very strong associations, as we've already mentioned, with some world-class choreographers over your career. I mean, you mentioned Nacho Duarto, Bill Forsyth, obviously, is a mentor, and latterly David Dawson. That's also must have taught you, alongside the fact that you danced in so many different companies. I imagine that international journey gave you an insight into so many different styles, and also working with those three choreographers and others, and I know how different they are. That must also have given you a kind of breadth of knowledge and education about different styles, I'm guessing.
It did. I must say, in the National Ballet School of Canada, at the time I was there, we had amazing training in different styles. We had a big training in Bournonville. I mean, we had Bournonville teachers coming over. We did Cicchetti syllabus at that time. It wasn't switched to Vaganova. We had a lot of English like ballets from Ashton in the repertoire. So I think I was exposed already very young in school. Then when Eric came and Reed, I was exposed to choreographers more, like just this mix of different styles, and him wanting his dancers to move through all those styles and with sophistication. And then as my career went on, I started out in more classical companies, but then I ended up in more neoclassical companies. And then as a teacher, I moved to Israel when I stopped dancing, and I was there in Tel Aviv for, I think I lived there for 3 years, and I was just freelancing. So I taught Bat Sheva, I taught the kibbutzit. Then I came to Europe and started teaching more modern companies like Kohlberg Ballet, Netherlands Dance Theater. And so and then Bill asked me to set his ballets, and I got to go to the Kirov, the Paris Opera, all these fabulous places and get inside view as to what these institutions were all about. I remember in Russia, I was so excited because we did the first Forsyth program ever there. And in between my rehearsals, I went to watch everything. I watched all the performances in the evening. I tried to understand. It was just so inspiring. So I guess what you say, I'm very lucky that for those 5 years that I was freelancing, I got to be so current. You could ask me, any dancer in any company, what the repertoire they were doing, who the ballet masters were. And I really knew what was going on. So it was amazing.
Amazing. When I kind of rewind to what I said at the beginning about when one reviews your career, you know, you're such an obvious prime candidate to run ENB. I mean, you could add to that there's not an awful lot of dance styles missing from your CV, and you know, it branches out into all kinds of different directions, which is amazing. Can we explore a little bit more your relationship with Bill? Because obviously he is, you know, a major force in dance over the last 30 or more years. How did that develop? I know you went to Ballet Frankfurt. You know, how did you become someone who actually set his work on other companies?
So the first time I met Bill, as I said, I was pretty out to lunch. I think I was 18 years old. I'd just gotten in the company, literally like a month before. And Reed said, oh, we're bringing a choreographer from a company in Germany. He's going to create a ballet, which became the second detail, which is huge. And he put in the beginning, they had cast all principal dancers and leading soloists. And Bill's always that kind of person that connects with younger people, the younger generation. And very quickly, through some casting issues, he just changed the cast and put like all the youngest new company members in, and he put me in it. And he just had this amazing ability to make you feel so special and trust yourself and have confidence. He talked to you almost like on your level, and it was this amazing person. So he, again, what I said about Eric, his style of directing is that everyone's an adult. So he treats you as an adult, and he expects that you act like an adult. So yeah, that was my first experience with him. And at the end of it, he said, why don't you come to Frankfurt Ballet? And I'm sorry, I don't think I can do that yet, but maybe I'll get in touch in a while. Oh. So
you're still there, don't worry. You froze for a fraction of a second.
Something came up there. And then how life goes, I believe, this journey, I ended up being in the Dutch National, and Wayne commissioned one of Bill's to premiere with us. And I danced quite a big role in that, and we really got along and we connected well. And he asked me again, do you want to come to Frankfurt? And I said no. And then some years later, like 5 years later, I had been in touch, and he said, just come down and see the company and hang out. And I had friends there, so I used to go all the time and watch. And then I hurt my foot. I broke some tendons in my foot in Sleeping Beauty, and I was off. And I went down to visit some friends. I had a cast on, and he just said to me, like, when are you coming? I said, but I'm injured. He said, well, you'll get better. Come. So I ended up just going, and then I launched into it. It was almost like I had just been putting it off because I wanted to do a certain thing. And then I thought, go with what's being presented with you. And we just, the relationship's been amazing, because he's been a mentor. He's been so supportive to me and to all of the people that he works with. He's an incredible inspiration. He's someone you can really talk to. And he's so creative.
Mm.
He taught me so much. Like when I went to Frankfurt Ballet and I stepped in after the Dutch National, I saw the group of dancers in the room. I thought, what have I done here? They're all so different, and this is so strange, and it's a different atmosphere. And as soon as I saw them dance, I realized why they were there, because every person had an extraordinary, unique quality. And that's something that stuck with me as well. It's like why we relate to dancers on stage mostly is through personality and charisma, and something that an affinity that you have with that person. It's not just technique, it's artistry. And yeah, so then after that, he said, he asked me, he saw me in the studio. He basically gave me a tape and said, learn your part. And when you know the part, we'll do some rehearsals. So I learned the whole ballet off of a videotape, came in, and he's like, ready, and then he was like, oh, well, do you want to, set something, help me with this or help me with that? And then he needed people to go set ballets, and he slowly just started to ask me, and I guess he was happy with what I was doing, and he kept it going, which has really been amazing. I loved setting.
I think there's a few things I take from all of that. I mean, firstly, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. So he came back to you 3 times. Secondly, as I recall, his company in Frankfurt wasn't a big company. So to want you, he must have seen something very particular. I know you're a very modest guy, so you're not going to say that, but he must have seen something very particular in your dancing to want you so badly. But I'm also guessing that he had plans for you maybe beyond being a dancer. That would have accorded with how you were seeing your future at that time. Is that fair comment?
I think so. I think also maybe Bill is fundamentally a classical ballet dancer that's evolved in certain ways, but his base was that, his love is that, he loves Balanchine, he loves all that world. So I think I was coming from more, he had people there for different reasons, and I was coming from more of a classical ballet background, which suited him in certain pieces he was doing, and also maybe in representing those pieces abroad in big companies. Like, I think he said to me when he sent me to the Kirov, I need to send someone who has that kind of background in classicism too. And so I think, yeah, it just served a purpose for both. But first and foremost, I think maybe he liked that I was musical and that I'd done tap and stuff like that before, because music is absolutely the first thing to him.
Yeah. I mean, he is, of course, a choreographer that even if you don't know a work of his and you don't necessarily know it's by him, you can recognize very quickly that it's his work. And yeah, I think that's the mark of greatness. And of course, I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but the one thing that you have in ENB is a company already that have been inspired by him, because I know, making the playlist works, the dancers, particularly the male dancers, were so kind of, it was one of their greatest experiences, I think. Okay, so tell us a bit about how you came to be director of Semper Opera Ballet in Dresden. And I think Bill had something to do with that as well, yeah?
Yeah. So basically in Dresden, they were doing a Forsyth program. Vladimir Derevyanko was the director then. And Bill asked me to come and set step text, I think. And I worked with the company for about, I don't know, over maybe 2 months, so I really got to know them well, coached them, and then I left. And very shortly after, I got a phone call from the intendant, Gerd Ucker, and he said, we're looking for a new director and we would love to have a conversation with you about it. We spoke to, obviously, William Forsyth has recommended you. And I think Bill had said something like, he put my name forward and said, if people like Aaron and Jason, who's running the school now, are in place, I definitely will want to be part of this in some way, as far as being able to do their choreography. And then apparently the dancers also, they had asked the dancers committee, and the dancers committee had also said that they would like to have me, which I was quite surprised by. But so yeah, and then they just, in Dresden, it's an intendant. There was no application, there was nothing. They just appointed me. He put me in, and you're there. This young, I was 36. I would never been a director. But Mr. Ucker had a plan to get the school and Hellerau, which is another very modern historical space, and the Semperoper connected. So he navigated that to get 3 directors that would work together that could really bring Dresden up. And we've been there both for 17 years doing like.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing thing. I've written quite a lot in the past about the politics of Central European dance, and it's something we don't necessarily understand here in the UK. You know, the fact that you've got often political appointments with intendants, you know, going and coming with political changes. And, you know, the history is littered with problems between the intendant and the artistic directors. You know, a new intendant comes in, they don't get on. I mean, you know, there's legendary stories about that, but you lasted 17 years.
That's something I'm extremely proud of. Yeah. No, because they equate it to a kind of a king. You equate it to, like, in England in the time when a new king or queen came in, and then they got rid of everyone else if they were this religion or that religion, and the whole new crew comes in. Well, it's kind of like that's what they do in the opera houses. They just sweep through. And I was one of the only directors that lasted 5 intendants.
5. I was going to ask you how many, but that's pretty amazing, and actually quite possibly a candidate for the Guinness Book of Records, I think, because I can't imagine too many people lasting through 5 political regimes. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Well done. And to be able to choose when you move on and go to another company, that's also quite unusual. You're obviously known for this balance between modernizing repertoire and maintaining tradition. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. And your links with people like Nacho, Bill, David Dawson, who I know was your artistic associate in Dresden. But as a choreographer, your output has largely been revisiting the classics. Don Q, Sleeping Beauty, Bayadere, Nutcracker. I mean, that's very interesting to me. Is that's been a deliberate process by you to try and breathe new life into classic music and classic ballets?
I would say this, I don't see myself really as a choreographer. I don't think I'd be so bold to say I'm a choreographer. I love, and I've always been passionate about classical ballet since I was young. And I love breathing life into them. I think that you need to respect the tradition, in classical ballet in its purest form is gorgeous. It's immaculate. But I do think that for today's younger audience, we have to find a way of refreshing them and making the momentum a little bit easier for younger people to get into. And so I've really enjoyed, I started with Sleeping Beauty. I did Nutcracker, Bayadere, as you said. I did Swan Lake also, and then Don Q. And with all of them except Don Q, I very much followed the traditional format. I re-choreographed a lot of divertissements and things, but the main sort of leading choreography of Pas de Pas was very much in place, but just coaching it differently. And I love that. That's what I do. I don't do anything else like choreographically. That's what I do, and that's what I like to do. And I've really enjoyed having those possibilities. And also as a director, it's been nice because I'm in the company, so I can keep evolving them. So where my Swan Lake started and where it just finished before I left, finally, I feel like that's where I want it to be, you know? So it's been great to be in a company where you can continually evolve those works.
You're very modest because you say you're not a choreographer, but you've tackled 5 or 6 of the mighty beasts of classical ballet. So, I mean, this was a question I was going to ask right at the end, but actually I think it plays in well here, because I did notice on social media that you've been you've agreed to sign up to the final bow for Yellowface, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Phil's work and what he's been doing in America and elsewhere. So I guess there's a link there, isn't there? Because modernizing and refreshing these ballets also means taking out of them things that certain parts of the community might find offensive. So I'm guessing that means you're going to have a look at some of the things already in the ENB repertoire. Is that a fair comment?
Yep, that is a fair. I mean, even coming up with the Nutcracker, Wayne's Nutcracker, that's something coming from Wayne too. I mean, I'm very much about, I really feel like we need to respect the choreographer's work. So I would, with any ballet that we have in our repertoire, I will be very closely in contact with that choreographer who's ever responsible, and engaging with them on castings, making sure that their vision is in place on the tempes, on the whole kind of look that they want, the quality that they want for their performances. I didn't even have to really, Wayne was already onto that because he's done the production in Finland, and he updated some things that we hadn't had updated yet. So it's just pretty common. And I had already signed up with Phil in Dresden and redone a few things in my Nutcracker there after speaking to him. But a lot of times I would reach out to the community. In my Bayadere, I had a South Asian couple come and watch, and they gave me the most interesting feedback that should have been so clear that I thought, why have we never thought of that? Such simple things, just to tweak it a little bit, that it really made sense to that community and nothing was offensive to do with the colors, the traditions, but also ripping a shawl off a woman that would never be done. Things like that. You know, you just don't even think about such small things that are big things that can make a difference to a production. The choreography can stay the same. Most of it's to do with the look of what you're representing.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I know Chris Hampson is doing something like that in his role in Scottish Ballet. I mean, for example, when they reset La Besa de la Fée, they invited the Scottish Romany community in to see how they were presenting you know, travelers, etc. And I think that's really important because, you know, to just transplant 19th century attitudes into the 21st century and understand that that alienates some part of the community you might want to come and watch them, I think that's very important. So a big round of applause, Aaron, for doing that. That's fantastic. I was going to ask if, it's probably a naughty question, but I was going to ask if we might see some of your kind of refreshing of the classics going on at ENB, or if it's a little bit too early to think about that.
I think, you know, yeah, I've just literally just got here, and I was really focused on that first program of just trying to clearly kind of show the vision and diversity of dance that I love, that kind of spectrum of what I want our dancers and our audience to move through. It's not going to be like that all the time, but I mean, and I can put programs together, but that was specifically to kind of say, this is the scope of what I would like to have here. And I would not say no to anything. I mean, I've got lots of ideas. I can't really share them right now, but I mean, there's lots of possibilities for the future, exciting possibilities in that way.
Yeah, we don't really expect you to give us any world exclusives, but of course, many of the people in our audience this evening will have seen the Our Voices program at Sadler's Wells. I saw it more than once, and it was I thought, a really interesting program. How did you feel it went as a kind of statement of intent for Aaron Watkin as a you know, as a kind of first program for you? And I know one of the pieces was commissioned before your time. It was a kind of hangover from Tamara's reign, but love to know how you feel it went.
So I think, you know, I was a little bit, I have, you know, 17 years of experience in Dresden, and I've really built up that audience to come with me. So we're really at a point there where whatever I'm presenting to them, they're fired up and ready to go from before they even see it. They're so fully on board. obviously Dresden is nothing to compare to London. I'm moving into a very different spectrum with way more visibility, many more opinions. I am happy in general with how it was received, both in the audience, because I was there every night and speaking to people and getting their feedback, and also with the reviews. I'm happy that in general, people felt that it was a bold new program, that there was a new breath of, not like a new energy maybe on stage with the dancers in this new choreography that they're being exposed to for the first time. And also that it seemed like an exciting new chapter. That's what people were, that was my come away with. Of course, everyone has different opinions about different pieces, and that's all subjective, and I'm fine with that. But I think in general, I'm happy with how it went, because it's obviously daunting to come into this. I could have been, just pummeled. But I think, as I said, it was really, I take a lot of my temperature from the actual audience, and people were so passionate and emotional about what they'd seen. They were so affected by different pieces. And I really enjoy that, because I feel like if you come to the theater, it needs to be more than just a good experience. It needs to be something that touches you. Either it can be that you hated it or you loved it, but I'd rather have that than just, oh, it was a nice night at the ballet.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Aaron, I think it was a program that was much more than the sum of its parts, if I can say that. For me, I absolutely love the fact that you brought a new work by David Dawson. I think he's massively overlooked in his home country. Is to my mind, is one of the three greatest British choreographers working today, and we don't see enough of his work. I'm going to be a little bit controversial, because I think some of my colleagues in the world of criticism are a little prejudiced against David's work for reasons that we probably know from the past. But I really hope that that's a beginning of a relationship. I don't expect you to comment on that, but for me, that was a really important part of the program. And I wanted to bring in something about your philosophy, because I was there on the opening night, and I heard your speech, which was sadly interrupted by the breakdown of the microphone. But you said that you wanted to create this mix of tradition and innovation. And actually, I read a quote which is still there on the Semper Opera Ballet website that I thought really broadened that out. And I'm going to just quickly read it out. You said, "My artistic vision for Semper Opera Ballet is based upon removing the borders that traditionally exist between classical and contemporary dance styles and redefining dance as the culmination of both." I love that quote. "Simply movement in time and space, a broader perspective of dance, a journey towards opening people's minds in search of a greater art, and that being my primary goal." And I kind of thought that, I'm sort of assuming that you can remove the Semper Opera Ballet from that quote, and it could also be your manifesto for ENB. Is that right?
I think it's my manifesto in general, like wherever I am, that is what I inherently believe in. And I probably here we've said more embracing tradition, forging innovation, and we didn't go into the specifics like what I articulated there, but absolutely I believe in what I wrote there. And I think theater has historically always been designed as it's an honor to come into a space like that and be transported. You should leave your reality for a little while. It should have something that touches you, that makes you think and makes you feel emotions. And I think, that's very subjective, because in that program, I can tell you how absolute certain people were with certain pieces and didn't like the other, and absolute opposites talking to the next person. And also, interestingly, the younger generation, what they were saying, as opposed to an older generation, and classical, more people who are experienced in classical ballet versus people who've never been to the ballet. That was really interesting to see what their takeaways were. So for me, it's just what I said. And that's nice that you found that quote, because thinking about that again, I should articulate that here as well, because I think it does sum it up quite nicely.
Well, I'm glad to have helped. That's good. But I mean, I think having a triple bill that speaks to different people on different levels is really important. So the fact that somebody, maybe didn't think one piece was great, but another person did, I think that's a really good thing. The other thing, of course, is with a lot of attention on the fact that there's a new work from David Dawson. Was the new interpretation of Les Noces by Andrea. But actually, I think one of the most powerful statements in that is bringing theme and variations. And I find it quite unbelievable, actually, that it seems to be the first, or certainly the first for a very long time, piece of Balanchine that the company has done.
Do you know what's interesting? I think Deborah Crane did an interview with me, and she mentioned to me, you've got 3 new choreographers coming. And I said, 3? It's Balanchine. She said, well, Balanchine isn't really visible here in the UK. There's not a lot of people doing it. I know the Royal Ballet has done different pieces, but it's not something that we're really seeing a lot of. And I have such a huge respect for Balanchine. I mean, just looking at that was done in 1947. 1947, and look at what that ballet still is and what it still will be. It's just, he's an incredible master musician and like shape maker of geometry and space and cannons, and it's like a Swiss clock. And Balanchine's work keeps your dancers inspired and in shape, all of them, from whatever role you're doing. It's just such great dance. We like watching it, the dancers like dancing it, we're challenged, and they're fabulous pieces that are timeless. So I'm a huge fan of him.
The wonderful thing about Balanchine in general, and TNV in particular, is made in 1947, but it reaches back into the 19th century and it reaches forward into the future. So timeless is exactly the word to use for it. And I thought your dancers did a brilliant job in assimilating a wholly different style, something that very few of them would have really been used to. So that was wonderful.
I just wanted, can I say one thing to that? Because
yes, of course, yeah.
That I wanted to
it's your show. You can say what you like.
That everyone just realizes we did 3 new styles that the company has never danced. I'm a new director with a brand new company that I don't know, didn't really have much connection with before. I don't know people there that well. And they basically conquered, or not conquered, they assimilated those styles to a certain point. I think that there's always room to grow. But if you think that they did the Balanchine basically in 5 weeks, 5 weeks,
Amazing.
We had Balanchine classes given to them by Vicky Simons, who was setting it. We were just loading them with tons of information. And then I went into David's rehearsal. I was like, it's so interesting. He's asking for the exact same qualities that Vicky's asking for in Balanchine. Then I went to Andrea's, which is a completely different style, and she was asking for the same thing: musicality, connection between the steps, not just the big steps. How do you get from A to B? And artistic. And it's amazing that I think people just have to realize that this is the beginning of a journey. This isn't a finished product. This is just
Yeah, absolutely. We don't expect you to reveal any secrets, but of course what we do have is your season now planned in advance. And I'm sure many of the members of the audience will know all about that and will be already planning and booking their tickets. But what in the season coming up are you particularly proud of? This is a statement I'm making for the company. I mean, without running through the whole diary of what's ahead, what are the particular things that you're really hoping are going to make the statement for Aaron Watkin as a new director?
Well, obviously, I think, most of the rep that we're doing this season outside the 2 premieres are pieces that they have in their repertoire already. So it's Akram Khan's Giselle that I'm hugely grateful to have. And we're actually taking it to Manchester for the first time after it was premiered there in 2016. So that's fabulous. And we're bringing back Mary Skeeping's Giselle, which the company had sort of not been doing. And I met with Irmgard Berry, was very happy to speak to her and hear how passionate she is about Mary Skeeping's Giselle. I danced it in the company. I remember it well, and it's a gorgeous, unique production for us. I'm so happy to have that coming back. Obviously, Nutcracker is a big, draw to the audience. And then I guess it would be, it's the Carmen that's coming from
Yeah.
Now,
are you okay? Do you want a drink or something?
Yeah. Let's have a little.
No, I was hoping you mentioned Carmen. I mean, Carmen's not in any way new to the ballet world, but this version is going to be new. What can we expect from it?
So I would say this, that in my vision this year, I wanted to do a very dynamic three mixed program to show off that kind of diversity, but I also wanted to have a full length that's reimagined, not refreshed. So it's just like what Akram did with his Giselle. Johan has done the same thing. He's created a Carmen, and Carmen is well known as a title, but in the ballet world, it's not a piece that's been done a lot. There's maybe 3 choreographers that have done it. And it's just a fabulous piece. Johan is also someone who's not so visible in the UK. He's hugely popular across like he's now going to Australia, to the States, and all over Europe. But he has, I think Alistair brought NDT2 to do one of his pieces, but he hasn't been seen so much. I'm really happy to have him coming because I'd like to introduce not new choreographers, but different choreographers. I think he's great at full lengths, and it's hard to find choreographers who are good at telling a narrative. I think it gives you everything you want from Carmen and more. I think it's hugely inspiring vocabulary for the dancers and great dramatic roles, not only for Carmen, but especially for Don Jose, the Torero, and Zuniga, the 3 men. There's big parts for them to sink their teeth into. And I think dramatic full lengths are really important for our artists.
I'm really looking forward to it, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't know enough about Johan's work here. It's a tough act though, because although you say that there's not many Carmen choreographies, and that's probably true, but I'm thinking in particular of the Carmen, which sort of failed at the Royal Ballet. It made a brief appearance. Tamara was particularly prominent in it, but it really kind of dropped. And Carlos's Carmen, of course, didn't really achieve a great deal of success also at the Royal Ballet. So let's hope this breaks the mold, and we all absolutely love it. And personally, I'm really happy that you're bringing back Mary Skeeping's Giselle, because it's one of the for me, one of the top draw Giselles, and we can't see enough of it. And I love the juxtaposition of Akram Giselle with the Skeeping Giselle. It's perfect.
That's what I was thinking too. That's so fabulous, because I remember back in the day, the Paris Opera doing runs of different productions where they would do back to back, like the classical Giselle and then Matzek's Giselle the next night, and your audience, you could really go between these 2 versions for the dancers, but also for the audience. And it's quite interesting to see how to appreciate how each of them found the beauty in the choreography in such different ways.
Yeah, I wanted to make just a point in passing, actually, because I had this on my notes, but it was mentioned by one of the LBC committee members, Fiona, in the preamble to this, and I think it's an important point. A lot of companies leave casting to the last minute, and when your core audience loves to see particular dancers, and one of the things that I think we've all really enjoyed is your preponderance to announce casts quite in advance, so people can make their mind up who they go and see. That's obviously a deliberate policy of yours, and one that I would applaud.
I think it makes sense in so many different areas. So just from a practical side of producing productions, of doing costume fittings in time, of getting things ready, you need that. So our costume department was hugely excited about that. Our publicity department was over the moon because they can start to already think of ways to promote when they know who's dancing, and putting things on our website for our audience. This is first and foremost, is building up those relationships. I want the public to want to see certain people because they know the dancers well. So I think, and last but definitely not least, is the dancers. Can you imagine? I mean, as an artist, you want to know what you're working up to. You want to know how to prepare yourself for those roles. You want also your stress, everything, how you're going to handle it. If you have your overview, I put up a principal casting internally for the whole season as well, so that our principals know exactly what they're doing outside the premieres, which are announced a little bit later, but we're really trying to get those up early.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, I speak to a lot of dancers in my job, obviously, and I'm often aghast that they really don't know what they're going to be doing in ballets that may be only a few weeks away. So I think it's a brilliant thing. Let me turn to another couple of issues that are probably a little bit more challenging. I mean, in his review in The Spectator, my colleague Rupert Christensen drew attention to the disparity in public funding for the Dresden Company. And in his words, the much more meager subsidy that ENB receives from the Arts Council. Is that a challenge to you, or do you see that as a problem? Are you kind of kept slightly immune from that because of the chief executive and the other people's roles? I mean, is ENB's reliance on private benevolence, which is strong, a difficulty, or do you see that growing?
No, okay, first of all, in my relationship with them, or in general? In general.
I mean, how much of a challenge is it to you in terms of putting on the repertoire that you would like to put on?
So it's challenging, and it's a very different setup. But I would say, in Dresden and in Germany, it's like you're on a ship sailing and you see something coming towards you. It hasn't actually hit yet, but it's about to. So that money that was just sort of given to us before is drying up. And as the money isn't available, it will continue to dry up. And what I feel more positive is now I'm on a ship that's very used to fundraising. It's not a new thing. They know how to do it. They have excellent expertise working 24 hours a day in our development departments, through our publicity, through fundraising. We're very grateful to the Arts Council of England for the substantial funding they give us. And yeah, it is a lot of work, to be honest. I would toot the horns of Patrick Harrison, our executive director, and Grace Chan, our chief operating officer, who I am sort of, we're very much a team. And that was introduced to me. And that was actually something from our chair, Sir Roger Carr, that he said to me in the beginning right away. This is very much about leading as this team, So I give my expertise to the artistic side, and they give their expertise to the administrative executive side, which they know about. So I think in that way, it's quite progressive. I like it. So I feel like I'm on the ship that is actually not sinking, but it is definitely everyday work to make it keep floating. Whereas in Dresden, when we were having conversations already with the intendant, it was more things about like, oh, we'll just have to cut that. We'll just have to cut that. They don't have the culture of fundraising and even sponsoring. It's not as advantageous in Germany. You don't get tax breaks to make donations. And actually, in a lot of, I remember issues where we even had people that wanted to donate, and it was just so difficult that in the end they couldn't because of taxes.
I mean, I think that's a really important point, Aaron. I wasn't going to say this, but I think there is a downside to that, as companies have found, as Bill's company in Frankfurt found. If you're absolutely reliant on public funding and suddenly it stops, there's nowhere else to go. So the balance between the two is really important. I mean, for the audience, we're probably in the last 5 minutes of my chat, so please get those questions ready. But a link to that is when you were dancing at ENB, unbelievably 3 decades ago, you would have been doing a lot more touring than the company is doing now. And obviously there is a cost to touring, but it's another thing that Christensen mentioned in his review was, we're lucky in London because we get to see so much of ENB. But do you foresee there's going to be more opportunities to tour elsewhere in England and internationally? Because I think we shouldn't forget that, one thing that's happened over the last 10 years is the international reputation of ENB, I think, has soared again, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot of interest in touring internationally, like offers coming, and obviously we have to look at that financially as well, that ensuring that we're going to make a profit from that as well. But I think it's difficult. You can't really, I mean, this is the thing that I learned very quickly. You can't compare to ENB to what it was 30 years ago and what it is now. The costs are astronomical for everything. And we actually, it was, when I told this to Deborah Crane, actually, we lose money on our national tours. We don't make money. So we have to regenerate, get that money from other places. Of course, we know that's our mission and it's very important for us to take dance there, but we have to find a way to be able to do it and also survive financially. So that's why you can't, if you look and think, oh, why isn't ENB touring more? They should, that's what they used to do. It's just impossible to compare. If you saw the figures, you'd be shocked.
Yeah.
It's hugely costly.
Yeah, I think we
to it.
I think we do understand that, but yeah, it's good to make the point again. I want to just finish off by talking about the dancers, because I think a circle has kind of gone round. When Tamara took over the company, I think by and large it was an aging company. There were a lot of dancers coming towards the end of their careers, and there was a need for a kind of turnaround from that. And I think you're kind of taking over a company which is, largely youthful, and there's a lot of young up and coming dancers within the company. And of course you brought 2 amazing dancers with you from Dresden, Sangyun Lee and Gareth Hoare, who we saw both used to wonderful effect in our voices. I wrote in my review actually that I felt that ENB probably needs a couple more starry lead dancers to kind of really bolster the top rank. And I know that all depends on money, but do you think that's a fair comment?
I mean, it's a comment that lots of people have made. I think there's different things to consider. When I came to Dresden, the company needed, like what you said with Tamara, a change. So I got rid of half the company. I did that whole thing. I know how to do that. Kept half, brought tons of new dancers from the Kirov, from Nacho, from everywhere. It was just a melting pot. I'm inheriting a company that is very strong already. It was in great shape for any director to come into. And I also feel like I'm at 53. You need to walk before you run. I'm not going to come in and drastically change the company before I even know what I have. I need to get to know them. I feel like we've got a lot of talent in the company in the junior ranks as well. And this season, we definitely have enough people to dance the roles, and I want to watch. I want to see how they develop. And then I will decide if I feel like I need to bring a few more in, or if there's enough people that we're generating to get to the top that are going to make that, because, it's highly demotivating for dancers to have a director come in and just shop around and bring in stars. I could easily have done that. You can imagine how many people contacted me to come to ENB. But I made a point of taking very few. I took Sung Young because I feel, and Gareth, but also Sung Young with her experience, that she really could offer such a wonderful quality and knowledge to the dancers through her experience, something a bit different, which is working beautifully. And I've got my eye on it. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. And I don't want to get ahead of myself before I actually know what I'm working with. And I want the dancers to have a feeling that I'm invested in them first. And then, yeah, we have to deliver. So at a certain point, I have to just see that's what we have. But I think there is a lot of talent in the younger ranks, in the men and the women.
Yeah, that's a wonderfully diplomatic answer, Aaron, but it's also illuminating. So thank you for that. I think your point about motivation of dancers within the company is a really, really important one. So I'm really glad that you made it. I've kind of got to the end. I just want to make one point, and you've been a perfect interviewee because I'm exactly on my time scale. We've only met a few times. It's to my extreme embarrassment that I never went to Dresden. I travel all over the world to watch dance, and I can't believe I didn't go to Dresden to see any of the work when you were there. But what I did was I asked a lot of people about you in preparation for this interview. People from all, dancers, audience members, trustees, all kinds of people, and two words came up over and over again: affable and approachable. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many times different people, without knowing that other people had said those things, mentioned you. And I think that's come over very, very strongly in this interview, Aaron. And I think that's going to continue to hold you in great stead going forward. So thank you so much for being a wonderful interviewee. Let's move to some questions.
Thank you as well.
And I have not been looking at the questions, so I'm just going to run through them here. And in true kind of GDPR way, I'm not going to say the full name of the people asking the question, just the first name. I think it's a question, but the first one is a kind of comment from Keith, who says, I was so surprised and pleased that the announcement of dancer promotions were filmed and made public. So interesting to see. I mean, again, I'm assuming that's a technique that you brought with you from Dresden, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I always believe like that's such a moment of celebration and recognition of people's work, hard work and achievement. And the dancers, that's like the most exciting thing for them. And I think it should be celebrated. And I always present that personally in the room in front of everyone. I want their colleagues, you see people just explode, in compliments and appreciation of their work. And it's a really nice moment. I think they work so hard, and I think it's something that definitely people should see outside and be a part of. And it's a huge aspect to the development of a company. I've always done it like that. And
Wonderful.
That's the way I know.
I mean, dancer promotions are things to celebrate, and it's nice when they're made on stage in front of an audience. But I often think that because dancers come from all over the world, that actually the filming of it is a nice thing, because people who know them in whatever country they hail from in the first place will actually get to share in that. So that's important.
Yeah. I have done that on stage before too, very specifically. So if there's a certain dancer that you really feel that is the moment on the stage after their performance to do it, I have done that. Doesn't happen just randomly. It happens specifically for specific people. And it's also a beautiful way to be recognized.
Yeah, and it's nice that you put that degree of thought into it. Next question is from Susan. She says, you mentioned more than once that music is of the utmost importance to your vision. She refers, of course, to Northern Ballet recently announcing that they will use recorded music when they tour from next year. And she asks, is this something that ENB has to consider? And you mentioned the cost of touring. Is it something that you might have to pare down other areas of touring in order to continue using live music?
No, I think that our Philharmonic is very much in our vision. We're very committed to where we're going with our classical and programs and the programs that are played. There are obviously some programs in our repertoire that have recorded music. The Forsyth program did with Tamara, different things. But in general, yeah, we're committed to our orchestra.
Thank you. Next question is from my good friend Rosie. It's a little bit of a naughty question, actually, but I like it, so I'm going to ask it. She says, Mary Skeeping's Giselle is my favourite traditional version. I love Akram's Giselle. I'm travelling to Bristol to see it again. I'm wondering if there's any chance of a third Giselle with David Dawson. I know
So
you can't say yes to that, but it's
I
nice
can
to
tell you
plant the
just a
idea.
little bit about that. So I commissioned, she obviously knows that that's been done, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because I commissioned that in Dresden for our company, which is also a beautiful production. I haven't thought about that yet because we have Akram's Giselle and we have Mary Skeeping's Giselle, but you know, never say never. Maybe it's a beautiful production. But I don't have that in my prospects at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question, I've been a very bad host, actually, because I haven't been keeping an eye on the questions, and I've already asked something very similar to this, but I think it's enough different for me to raise it. It comes from Linda, and she says there's been a tendency within ENB, at least in recent times, to bring in guest principals from outside. Do you envisage doing the same or growing the stars from within? You've already more or less answered that, but she then goes on to say, linked to that, there appear to be a lot of ranks within the company. Now that no one is occupying the principal category, might it be possible to have just one principal level? I mean, just for people's benefit who don't know this, there's tended to be a kind of lead principal and a principal category.
Very perceptive questions and definitely things I'm considering.
Wonderful. Good answer. Fantastic. Next question is from Fiona. And she says, I'm delighted to see Loretta Summerscales coming to guest. We're all happy about that. We all miss her here in the UK. And was thrilled to see Yana Salenko last season. It's great to have this opportunity to see some stars from abroad. Well, it's a similar question. What's your philosophy on guests going forward? So we had two questions really coming at the same point from different angles.
I think my philosophy is this. In general, I feel like when you bring a guest, it should be people that are extraordinary, that you really feel like your dancers need to experience and your audience needs to experience, but also heavily considering the dancers, not to bring them in because you feel maybe we don't have the people to do that, because I think that says something about the company then. I think we should have our dancers be invested in them and have the level that we need for that. But in Dresden, I didn't bring many guests in, but when I did bring them, they were very planned. You know, I brought Polina Semyonova in because I wanted our audience to experience her, or Yana Salenko, different people. I had different dancers coming at different times for different programs. But yeah, I think there's pros and cons. You have to do it for the right reason, but I would be doing it because I felt that no one in our company could do the opening night. And also you have to think, if you're taking an opening night away from our company, that's also something that's a bit demoralizing for the dancers.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a very important point. It's not a question and it's on the same theme, but I think everybody deserves their comments to be made known to you. It's Rosie again, and she says there's such a lot of talent. She names a whole group of dancers. I'd love to see them develop rather than seeing stars. So that's very much in the same vein. And just two more questions. From Anna, she says, when you consider other choreographers that are seen less in the UK, would you consider acquiring works from their existing rep, or is it always your preference to commission something new from them? For example, like David Dawson, Alexei Ratmansky is also not seen much in the UK, but he's made a significant number of shorter works, principally in the US, that are well regarded. So, you know, it's a kind of existing versus new question.
So I commissioned Alexei to do a creation for us in Dresden, Tanzsuite, which is very beautiful, to Strauss. And I've worked with him. I have a huge appreciation for his work. I would say a lot of choreographers. So when I open a conversation with the choreographer, I'm not dictating heavily, especially in the beginning, parameters of what they need to do. I'm asking them, we would love to have a work from you. What would you like to start with? And most of them would like generally to start with an existing work because they want to get to know the company and get the dancers to get to know their style, and then bring them back for a creation. So that's usually how it would work. Of course, sometimes you can convince the choreographers to do a creation if they're maybe a little starting out, not as well known maybe, but I think as they get more established, they really want the quality and level of their choreography to be presented in certain ways. And like even Johan, he was I said to him, I want to do a piece from you, and we spoke about different pieces, and he said, I want to come into the UK with this piece because this is the piece that I feel more confident with, and it's been tried and tested. You know, it's a dialogue. It's not just me dictating what I want.
Thank you. We've got 3 more questions, which I think is going to bring us to the end. So please don't put any more questions in the chat, because we're not going to get round to them. The next question is from Candace, and again, I think it's a question you're not going to be able to answer fully, but you might be able to give us an indication. She says, thank you so much for theme and variations. Such a joy to see it. I totally agree ballet fans don't get enough Balanchine in London. Please share what other Balanchine works you love. And the bit I don't think you can answer is, and are thinking about for EMB. With full understanding is early, and any specific ballets may or may not be scheduled. Well, I'm sure they're not scheduled yet. But, you know, other Balanchine works that you love, that might be a...
Oh, I basically love almost all of Balanchine's work, I would say. I think it's, I mean, in Dresden, I think I did maybe 9 ballets. I did all of Jules there as well. I did things from his more classical to his leotard ballets. That's also, I think, if I would consider another ballet to bring from Balanchine in some years, something very different from theme, a leotard ballet. So, you know, because he's so known for those works, Concerto Barocco, or maybe Four Temperaments, or Agon, or Symphony in 3 Movements. I mean, they're all fabulous. There's so much to choose from. I don't know what I would do next, but I definitely want to have more. I've got a wonderful relationship with the Balanchine Trust, and they actually came to our premiere as well and have been so supportive. I would definitely want more Balanchine.
Wonderful. Last 2 questions are also about new works, actually. First of all, another Rosie, not the same Rosie, a different Rosie. She says, we're starved of Bournonville works here. Any chance you could consider putting on one of those in the future?
I love Bournonville too. And I danced quite a bit myself when I was younger. Bournonville is such a great, I would love to expose the company to it more. And I think London Festival Ballet was quite renowned for Bournonville. So yeah, that's definitely something that's in my mind for the future, from some of the full lengths that we all love.
And bearing in mind what you said right at the very beginning about your involvement with this ballet, Michael says, any chance of a full Paquita being produced and not the Lecoq version?
Well, I think the full Paquita, I haven't thought about that really. I mean, I do think that there's a reason, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but there's sort of a reason why certain acts of certain ballets have kind of existed and keep going, and why some other acts sort of disappear. I'm not considering at the moment a full-length Paquita, but I love Paquita.
Mm-hmm.
The third, I mean, I love it in one act. And a similar, I remember in Canada, we did Ramonda, but we just did the 3rd act of Ramonda. You know, those acts that kind of stay around unless you're redoing the whole thing. But I don't really I hadn't thought about doing a full-length Paquita.
Wonderful. I did say I wouldn't allow anything else, but there's one more point, and it's a comment rather than a question. So, and it's from somebody I've known for a long time, Janet. So I'll just plant it. She says, Symphony in 3 movements, please.
I saw that, and as soon as I saw her write that, I thought, fabulous. I'm glad with that ballet's liked here. We did that in the Dutch National. We had the 2nd biggest Balanchine repertoire in the world. I don't know if you guys, if you know that. And we did at the end of one of our seasons, 3 weeks of Balanchine with 3 different programs rotating. We did, I danced a massive Balanchine repertoire, and I danced the first lead couple in Symphony in 3 Movements. And it's one of the most fabulous ballets to dance. It's so much fun. The music's great. So that I got a positive feedback there. That's definitely something that
I'm sure Janet will be very pleased. Well, Aaron, as I said right at the very beginning and at the end of our initial chat, it's been wonderful chatting to you. You know, affable and approachable, I think they ought to be, you know, kind of on a badge somewhere, because they're perfect descriptions. Thank you so much. And without further ado, right on time, I will hand back to Susan.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you for the interview as well and for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you both very much. That was absolutely fascinating. Such an insightful conversation. And it's wonderful to finally get to meet you and to get to know a bit about you, Aaron, even though many of us are aware of your past triumphs, and but to see where you're thinking of taking the company, and that is wonderful. And obviously you're inspiring the dancers, and inspired dancers only benefit us, the audience, because we are going to see some brilliant dancing in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And Graham, thank you as well for a terrific interview. Graham will be back with us on the 8th of November when Daria Klementova will be with us on Zoom. And it's been a while since Daria spoke to us, so that should be a lot of fun. And on December 11th, the wonderful Loretta Summerscales will be
our lovely
guest. Yes. So, and many of you know Loretta. She's been a great friend to all of us for a long time, and she's so looking forward to seeing people. So please come out to the Royal Ballet School that evening and say hello to Loretta and welcome her back to London. We're all excited that she's going to be with ENB. Also, there are a few places still left for the Dance Forward classes at the Royal Opera House in October, November, and December. They're being taught by some of the biggest names in British ballet, and it's an opportunity not to be missed. So if you don't want to be disappointed, please sign up now. You'll get all the booking details for everything at the website, www.tlbc.org.uk. So once again, Aaron, Graham, a huge thank you from all of us. It's just been such a delightful evening, and the time's gone so quickly. I'm sorry you can't hear the applause. It's deafening, but you will hear it, Aaron, at many of the performances.
Thank you very, very much. It's really nice to connect, and I feel so, I must say, coming to London, so welcome here by everyone. It's been just lovely and so supportive, and I'm really excited. Will do my very best to try and keep ENB moving onward and upward.
Well, you're off to a great start, so thank you. And thanks to all of you for being here this evening, and to our Canadian viewers. I know there are a few of my fellow Canadians are in the audience. Happy Thanksgiving. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks again, Aaron and Graham.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Good night, everyone.